Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the people who work at the UN, because I know that it's an uphill task trying to create a better world for all, trying to bring peace in the world, especially in these very challenging times, can't be easy. And especially when sometimes big countries who have a lot of influence don't support the things that you're dealing with, but you're there in and out of your offices and out in the field sometimes in uncomfortable situations or even very dangerous situations, continuing with your work for peace and a better world. So my hands of namaste to you all, and a big, big thank you from all of us at the Brahma Kumaris. I feel that it was a very momentous period of euphoria and intoxication, and a feeling that with all the things that had gone on since the First World War and the Second World War, it was time really for something beautiful to happen now. And so I know that at the same time that Brahma Kumaris were founded, the World Congress of Faiths was also founded. And of course, that had a big impact on the whole movement for interfaith dialogue and interreligious activity. And so, yes, I think that there was a lot of hope for the future that everybody was sharing and experiencing. And it lasted for quite a while, actually, through the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. And then things started to turn around in the 70s in a very materialistic way. And so with those first 30 years, I think, were very euphoric. I think the leadership of the UN right at the very beginning, and of course U Thant was one of the pioneers, and there was that whole space where, even within the UN building in New York, there's a silent space. And it's with that awareness that inner work is needed if you're to accomplish anything useful and powerful in terms of the world. And so I think that there's a deep spiritual foundation at the start of the UN, which has been nurtured by several others, of course, since then. I'm thinking of powerful individuals like people who I know personally, and the late Robert Mueller, Assistant Secretary General. Sometimes people called him Mr. UN, sometimes they called him Mr. Happiness, because he wrote a book on the subject of inner happiness and peace. So there have been powerful individuals at the UN who've really moved things in the right direction, with the understanding that spirituality is universal, and at the heart of spirituality is a subject of values. And of course, the UN has a whole caucus that deals with values, but generally speaking, it's an organization that understands that values are at the base of all civilization. And if we want the world to be civilized, we need values, and therefore we need spirituality, which is why the Brahma Kumaris were given general consultative status many decades ago, with that understanding that spirituality has an impact in all the fields of human endeavor. And if we can focus on the transformation within, then transformation outside is understood. It will happen quite naturally. We are seeing all the problems of the world, and what we are seeing in all of that is that the cause is actually the materialism and consumerism and the divisions that have been created by materialistic consciousness rather than a spiritual consciousness. It was very interesting to hear the current president of Iceland. She's been in the corporate world for, I think, most of her life, and then she decided to come back home to Iceland. And we were with her earlier this year in May, and she was addressing a gathering of 300 people there at the Spirit of Humanity Forum. And what she said was that all the problems we see outside have been caused by human beings. And we've been trying to look for external solutions and we're not finding them. But if we were to go inwards, maybe we would find something. And later when we did a meditation together, she was again commenting on how she herself does meditate, and she feels that meditation and a change of consciousness to a higher awareness, not just dealing with the materialistic side of the human being, but the being itself, to explore what there is within the being. And of course, values lie within the being. So it's true, most people accept the need for values in life, but where do values lie? They lie within the human spirit. And so we are all spirit, whether we acknowledge it or not, but each and every human being is spirit. And then, yes, of course, the being needs a physical body to be able to manifest its thoughts and feelings and bring those thoughts and feelings into action. So truly, it is the spiritual change of consciousness that has to happen, not just within a minority, but maybe the minority has to reach a critical mass before the majority starts accepting these ideas. And I think that the UN is an amazing platform. We don't have another platform like this anywhere else, a platform that brings together a universal community, truly looking at the whole world as one family. And so through that consciousness, coming back to the awareness of values and silence and meditation is so very important. There are two aspects to this. I'll take up the spiritual aspect first. If we can come together with this awareness that truly, as a human species, we are one family. Whatever the color of our skin, whatever our background of race or religion or caste or creed, it is truly one family. That's one aspect. But the other aspect, which is more pragmatic, think about a boat. And this planet of ours is a very delicate, big boat in which we are all sitting. If something happens in one part of the boat, water starts creeping in, the developing countries and the small islands are sitting in one part of the boat, and they're screaming and saying, danger, danger, danger. But those sitting on the other side of the boat are saying, it's okay, it's okay. And they're thinking, well, it'll never reach us. But of course, the water continues to creep along. And I think it's now touching the ankles of the developed world. And we're beginning to see drought and wildfires and floods, volcanoes, storms. All of this is happening at an unprecedented rate. And it's happening in a very intense way, in a very fast way. And so I think that it doesn't take a lot of common sense to understand that these problems that humanity is facing, whether it's poverty, whether it's malnourished children, whether it's climate change, the breakdown of the environment, the upheaval and uncertainty of the economy everywhere, we're in the same boat together. And if today we're in denial that things are happening that are going to impact us all, it's a very blinkered perspective. I think it just takes a tiny amount of wisdom to look around the world and see what's happening, or even to look at our own country and see what's happening there, and to understand that it's part of a bigger picture. One country on its own does not have the capacity to resolve all the issues that humanity is facing today. It truly is only with collaboration, not even just cooperation, which I give my little finger and you give yours, but no, the sum total of human endeavor and creativity and ingenuity and love. This is what is going to create an awareness with which we can tackle all of these things and together create a better world for all. And I hold that vision very deeply in my heart, that has to be the next phase of humanity, a better world in which there's justice and truth and love for everyone. No one gets left behind. At the time of the UN Millennium Peace Summit, which was in the year 2000, and if you go back to 25 years ago when we had the millennium, everybody's feeling was that this was an opportunity for change. The millennium was going to be a different millennium than the last two previous ones. And yet, of course, very quickly, lots of things happened that made us realize that the problems haven't been dealt with. But I think that if I look back since the World War of the 40s, although we now have wars that are quite horrific, that are still continuing in so many different parts of the world, yet today, of course, we're at the brink of something bigger than just country-wise. It's a world story. But for about 70 years, or even 75 years since the end of the Second World War, there was relative peace, in the sense that there was a lot of cooperation between countries, a lot of give and take. Climate change was, of course, a different story. But again, the developed world were not really willing to acknowledge that they were in any danger. They thought that the underdeveloped world or the developing world was in danger, not they. But I think that's all changed now. But if I look back at that time of 75 years, until about COVID and the start of COVID, up until then, there was relative peace. Europe, that had had on its continents many, many, many battles and wars, never mind the two big ones, but it's been a history of war for 1,000 years there. Now, Europe was together. We had the common market. We had people come together with that willingness to adjust and cooperate for peace. And then somehow with COVID and a downturn in the economy in many places because of COVID, but other factors also, again, there seems to be a situation in which it's very fragile. Is peace a reality? Can peace actually happen? It's again become a question mark. But I think for 75 years of the UN, we had a long, undisturbed period in which there was trust, in which people were coming together as a human family. We were trying to deal with all the different diseases. And again, we've gone backwards a step in that. But yes, the other aspects of, say, children and labor and the environment, they all took a step back also. But certainly for the first 75 years, peace was a reality for most of the world. So I don't think that we can say that the UN can't do anything. I believe that they have done a lot. They have brought together people from all the different areas of human expertise to give their talents to looking at situations that hopefully we will be able to resolve with a change of heart, a change of consciousness. And I think that that's what needs to happen now. The Millennium Peace Summit was interesting because this is why they called together religious and spiritual leaders, because it's actually an assembly of nations, and the nations stand for their citizens, true, but yet it was national leaders that would come together at the UN. It was never religious and spiritual leaders. But when they put the facts before us and said that, well, we have more resources, we have more money, we have more people, we have more expertise, we have more knowledge, we have more of everything. But things have gone backwards in terms of social development. And they asked themselves the question, but why is this? And they came up with the thought that it's people who need to want to make things change that can bring about real change. And so they called the religious leaders, spiritual leaders, knowing that they have contact with high-level people in their countries, but also that they're the people in touch with the grassroots. And so to change consciousness and create that awareness in which there's the will to be able to do something for everyone, they were hoping to ignite that. And yes, for some organizations, this is what has happened. I know that from being a purely spiritual organization that was sharing these ideas, around the 90s, we took a different turn. And we made a conscious decision to create a hospital, then that could serve in the tribal areas of where our headquarters lies, Mount Abu. It's a very deprived area where a lot of tribal people live. And so serving that community became quite an important factor in our work. And that has multiplied and grown since. But also serving all the different professional areas of experts, the different professional fields of endeavor. We wanted to bring in the subject of values so that whatever field people were in, they would continue to do that work in that field, but they would also bring in the context of values and the foundation of values. And this has proved to be very, very successful in its outreach. And so we have 20 plus wings, we call them wings here, but they represent the different areas of professional expertise. And so I think it's that awareness of knowing that what needs to happen today is coming together of all forms of understanding, of expertise, of research, and together we can resolve the problems of the world. What we found is that there's so much good work happening through philanthropy across the world, in all regions of the world, but it's not able to shift the actual undercurrent that's creating the problems. And so more money is being given and being put to good use generally, but yet still the problems are multiplying. There's something that the founder spoke to me about in 1968 in the month of June. And this is when I had decided that I wanted my life to be a spiritual life and not just spirituality and engaged in other things, but really just a total surrender to God and humanity and service. And there were 3 questions that the founder asked me. He was 92 and I was 19. So I don't think he was expecting any answers from me, but I listened. The first question was, is it possible for every human being to be healthy? I didn't have an answer. He said, yes, it is. Second question, is it possible for every individual to have enough for their needs? And again, his answer was, yes, it is possible. And the third one was, is it possible for every human being to be happy? And again, the answer, his answer was yes. And then he went on to say, the basic issues that create all these problems in the world are human nature, the nature of lust, of anger, of greed, of attachment, and above all, ego. And you can't tell people to deal with these traits. They'll say this is normal, it's part of human life. But in fact, the origin of the human species, the soul, has goodness and kindness. These are not the normal states of being, but the normal state of being of the human spirit is of love, of truth, of joy, of peace. And if you tell people, they may or may not believe you. But if you work on yourself and bring about transformation within yourself, then as a result of that, then when they see your transformation, they will be inspired and they will say, yes, I want to do the same. And so where you look at the world story and say, well, building hospitals, that's important. Doing organic farming, that's important. All these things are important. But at the heart of it is the change of human consciousness and coming back to the original state of the human spirit. And that happens in a very natural way if we spend time in silence, in prayer, in reflection, meditation, call it what you will, but the opportunity to go within and go on that inner journey in which we're able to bring about the transformation in which I have the capacity, the power to deal with my own negativity and remove that, but also to enhance the goodness that's already there within. And so I think that when we work on ourselves in this way, and I think, yes, I know it's a minority at the moment, but I think the minority is reaching a point where it's touching critical mass. And once it does that, then yes, I think the world will accept these ideas and the world will be ready to make that change so that we can actually realize the world that we want to have. There's something very beautiful that's happened recently. Last year, early in December, a group of ambassadors of different countries came together to suggest at the UN, at the General Assembly, that there should be a World Meditation Day. We are used to having World Yoga Day, which has now been on the 21st of June, and we've been doing that, I think, for around 14, 15 years or so. But now this concept of World Meditation Day, and it was presented, and within 2 weeks, all the countries had agreed that we should go ahead, and on the 21st of December last year was the first World Meditation Day. And so we're coming up very soon to the second World Meditation Day. And I think last year, because it happened so quickly, many people weren't really aware of it. But can you imagine a day in which people focus on meditation, going into the depths of the soul, coming to that awareness of inner peace, and we decide to, within our own time zones, whatever time is comfortable and convenient, but the energy of the earth is definitely going to be going up a few notches higher. And so I think that, again, the UN has created a platform that we can actually use to help peace in the world. So there isn't another organization that has a universal outreach in the way that the UN does. And so my hope is that this contribution from the UN, World Meditation Day for the whole of humanity, will bring about very positive developments.